All right, everyone. Welcome to the next episode in the Prop Tech Genius Show. And today's genius is Hector Kolonas. Hey, Hector. How are
Hey,
ya?
hey, I'm good. Good to be here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm so good. Hector and I have known each other for 4 years now, 3 years now, virtually, because we were in Clubhouse. We were Clubhouse buddies together. And then we actually met in person in New York, right? That one time. So that was super cool. And today we both got the memo. We were so in sync that we wore the same colors. So, that's how it goes. That's how we roll. It was a color coordinating day on the podcast. And so that's what we're doing. So there you go. We both look good in pink and blue. So it's awesome.
Uh,
Awesome
I'm
stuff.
glad to hear that.
Well, I will let Hector introduce himself, tell everybody what he does, how cool he is, what he does in real estate and prop tech, and take it away. I don't need to introduce you. You can do that. It's all
Sure. I
good.
mean, I definitely wouldn't call myself cool. I
Oh,
think
come on. You're a genius
uh,
today.
that works for me. So I've come to kind of prop tech and commercial real estate from the co-working side of the world. Since 2013, where I turned old ad agencies or suddenly empty ad agencies into co-working spaces.
Oh,
I was immediately hooked on this idea of people sharing workspaces, sharing resources, sharing contacts, insights, knowledge. Back in 2013, I didn't know it was called co-working. We used to call it rent to desk. Um,
so
and so,
you were doing co-working before co-working was cool. That's
yeah, I mean, it
awesome.
was around the same time. I remember doing a timeline last year, looking kind of
Yeah.
when co-working started. It started a little bit before that, but it wasn't actually like a term that people used in
Yeah.
colloquial conversations like we do now,
Yeah.
or most people do now. I still think that some of my friends outside of the commercial real estate world are like, "Co what? Is it with a dash? Is there no dash? Um, is that like a hotel?" Like, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, back in 2013, I got into it kind of just running makeshift co-working spaces. Uh,
Wow.
from them until now, I stepped away from running spaces to filling spaces, then to building software for people running spaces, and then eventually to where I am now, where we realize that everything within a building doesn't speak to each other. And I mean everything, I'm talking about the software, hardware, people, systems,
Hmm.
solutions, processes, they were all disconnected and siloed. And so my day job right now is leading the team at Syncaroo, where we build a mechanism for pieces of technology to talk to each other so that humans can do more rewarding tasks than copy and paste things from one place to another.
Ah, very, very cool. Yeah, no, I mean it's a cool thing. It's the evolution of technology, right? I mean, at some point you gotta automate everything. I think I hear everything is about automation, 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 right? To make people's lives better. It's always
Absolutely.
a very cool thing. And real estate is so fragmented anyway. I mean, and if we can get people to just start talking to one another, that's like a leap ahead. For
That's what's
sure.
beautiful about like the obviously things like the US PropTech Council, where it's getting people to share ideas. We're doing that, and increasingly we're becoming more aware that as we share ideas, as we share resources, we're seeing this across co-working and commercial real estate, and now in PropTech as well, that we're
Yeah.
sharing ideas, but yet the technology itself still doesn't talk to each other because they're written in different languages. They have different APIs, they have different
Yep.
schemas, they have different data sets, they have
Yeah.
different taxonomies, terminologies, and
Yep.
so I love that folks like yourselves are making the people speak to each other. And on the flip side, we're making the technology speak to each other so that we can all build on top of each other's knowledge instead of
Right.
recreating 100 wheels.
Yeah. Because I think at some point, every space turns into a mixed use space. I think at some point, like hotels are going to have co-working, right? People are going to realize that they need to make money on every square inch of that building. And what can we do, right? We have this coffee shop and a lobby that's hardly filled. So why wouldn't a hotel like have a part of like a co-working, or at least,
Yeah.
that's what everybody does now. Like, no joke, that's what I do. If I have to go, if I don't have a co-working membership and I want to go somewhere, I go to a hotel lobby when I'm like wherever, and I use it as my space. I have meetings in there. I do all sorts of things in there, and it's free space. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, co-working people, but that's what I do. I mean, I don't want to, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's It's actually pretty interesting because a lot of hotel chains, if you kind of look at like the Hoxton, what they're doing with their own co-working brand, is they realize that people are coming to their lobbies, which is an open space. But then you can also go to like, you know, use their podcast studios or use their
Yep.
actual hot desk or use their permanent desks and have a screen there. So they're definitely learning that there's more to it than just the lobby
Hmm.
space. The lobby space is
Yeah.
always going to be an option of a third space.
Right.
But just to go back to something you mentioned is like, yes, buildings are trying to monetize every square footage, but when they get everything kind of working seamlessly and they think about more than just the square footage, you start monetizing virtual services, business
Oh,
support
yeah.
services,
Right.
additional revenue sources that
Right.
four walls and a Wi-Fi connection don't normally provide. And that's where we're seeing these fantastic brands um, across the co-working and commercial real estate world start adding a whole lot more like amenitized concierge level services that
Hmm.
are bringing people into buildings that maybe they wouldn't have visited 6 months ago or wouldn't have gone to work from
Yep.
last.
Yeah, no, 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 for sure. Can you imagine the advertising potential at a co-working space? Like
I,
people like, like the billboards of like it's like think of a billboard on a highway. It's the
mhm,
same thing. You get a ton of eyeballs in a co-working space,
yep,
ton of different eyeballs, right? Because they come and go. And it's like, and so it's gonna be interesting how it monetizes where it's not annoying, right? You don't want an ad every 5 seconds when you see stuff, but you can strategically place ads and be really smart about it where it's not so intrusive.
yep.
But that's another way for people to make money off of their buildings. I
Yeah, it
mean,
doesn't have to only be ads. I mean, it could be
yeah,
experiential campaigns, right? I mean,
yeah,
my
oh yeah,
first almost 9 years in co-working, my job was to secure partnerships between brands and co-working
mm,
spaces.
oh
And so
yeah,
we did activations for like B2B companies where they would come in and do lunch and learns, which is a different level of engaging with that great audience
mm-hmm,
of businesses.
mm-hmm,
Or coffee tasters or samples or all these different things you can do with an audience who's
right,
not captive but are there to get more than just a somewhere to work.
right,
There's a huge possibility. There's so many opportunities, and it also spills out of the building.
mm-hmm,
Um, I know we're talking in a previous call for the council about this doom loop that many cities are finding themselves in, and
yep,
the office buildings empty out. That affects the shops that are on the ground floor. The shop affects the shops that are down the street. If you suddenly drop a flexible office solution into these buildings and people are coming in and using the space, even if it's 3 days a week or 2 days a week, um, you suddenly are regenerating the entire area. The shops
yeah,
to sell to, the restaurants if someone's come in at lunch, the whole area
mm-hmm,
gets lifted back up, and then the rest of the building actually increases in value. A
yeah,
lot of like the landlords that I've worked with or spoken to over the last 2 years, they use kind of co-working or flex in their even basement levels or ground and first floor levels to increase the footfall and then increase the value of the rest of their building. So
right.
it's just a fantastic part of the market to be involved in. I could talk about this all day. It's just
But
that.
that's okay. I mean, but so if we're gonna apply, I mean, there's certain things in co-working that would be really, really useful if a multifamily owner were listening, right? I mean, it's because y'all have perfected community. Like, I mean, every multifamily owner wants to build community with their tenants, right? But that's what you had to do to get to people to show up. It wasn't about yeah, oh yeah, I could give you a desk, right? Yeah, that's cool. Well, you can go to Starbucks and get a desk, well,
Yeah.
sort of a desk, right? But no, it was more about you were seriously creating a community in there where people were collaborating, they were getting business done, they were meeting people in there, and it was a better space to do business. You gave people an address, you gave them a kind of a starting point to launch from, right? Versus a Starbucks can never do that. I mean, you could do meetings in Starbucks, it gets really loud, so it was, but the whole community building piece, right? But hotels can do that and learn from that, and everybody else can learn from that. Plus the whole flex. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, this is gonna, I do these all the time. I'm gonna give somebody $1 billion idea because I don't have time to do every $1 billion idea that comes out of my brain. But uh, how about industrial flex space for industrial where people all they need is an address and a place to receive materials, so all those contractors who work from home, that they can't get materials shipped to their house. They have to have a business location. Why can't we just, you know, have them have a place for them to do that, right? You know what I mean? I'm like,
So I'm gonna say that your brilliant idea is currently being pursued by 6 companies. Right.
oh, okay, all right, see,
So
all right, they
I
listen to me so fast, they're already doing it.
I'm very much into like I'm data driven, right? I like to see what's happening in the market, make decisions based on that. So every week, every Thursday, I send out a newsletter called This Week in Coworking, and I share interesting models, stories,
Hmm.
things I'm seeing around the world. Now, in multifamily, there are 3 operators, including Industrious and Apt Co-work, who are partnering with multifamily landlords to build their co-working offerings for them. So that's a
Oh, that's
market that's
awesome.
being attacked from multiple angles. Then we have what you're referring to is essentially co-warehousing and e-commerce first spaces.
Yeah.
Um, so not only for kind of the industrial folk, but also for folks who just have to do drop shipping or they have to do, their direct to consumer and they need space to store their product and a desk, which
Hmm.
you traditionally can't get in a normal co-working space. So that's another whole sector, and you've got a few operators both in the US and across Europe who are really kind of investing in these kind of warehouse, kind of shed, self-storage type models, but on a more co-working community level. So you're
Yeah.
surrounded by other companies who are also in the
Yeah.
same kind of industry. Then you're going all the way to kind of nichification. You've got all these different models targeting different parts of the US and the worldwide economy, from
Right.
everything like the traditional, mom and pop or freelancers and startups, all the way through to like co-working spaces now for flex spaces who only serve commercial remote workers. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
even sell to the public; they sell to companies, and the
Mm-hmm.
companies give credits to their employees, 100,000 at a time, 1,000 at a time, and they can then go and use any type of space, whether it's a Starbucks like cafe space or a headphones on deep work
Oh,
space, or even, day offices for their teams to come together instead of sitting in a stuffy meeting room in some,
yeah.
corner of the city. And so, yeah, it's just a very vibrant market. And I love the fact that you identified one of the growing undercurrent trends, and that is spaces for, industrial. We're seeing the same thing with labs, with kind of biomed,
Oh
all
yeah,
two different.
life sciences labs where they have shared time on the lab space. Yeah, I know somebody in San Diego who's doing that, and that
Yeah,
just helps the whole industry because you can't afford. Not every life science person can afford to have labs for full time, right? But they need a little bit here and there to test stuff, right? Yeah,
yeah. And that
yeah,
actually brings us to obviously the next opportunity is we were already sharing in like inventory resources space. We're already sharing services. We're already sharing kind of medical equipment and maker labs. The next is going to be compute, right? So merging that huge market in CRE of data
mm-hmm,
centers and
mm-hmm,
AI with
mm-hmm.
kind of companies who can rent space on those servers and a physical space as well. So it's not, it doesn't leak out. That's your $1 billion opportunity.
Oh yeah,
And if
oh
anyone's building that and
boy.
you need technology to connect everything together, give me a call.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. And then the security levels and so the whole cybersecurity thing. But if they can, which they probably can, because another friend of mine just created this whole new. He's been in cybersecurity for a long, long time. Very good dude. He just created his new startup around something similar to that, but it's all based off of AI and data centers and. Yeah, no, it's super cool. But yeah, I mean, that truly is. I mean, like, I don't know how you rent a server for just a time, but I mean, some of the data,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's
yeah, you don't
interesting.
rent actual servers, you'd rent commute or compute. So it's kind of what AWS does. It'll be on-prem as opposed to in the cloud.
Oh, in the
So
cloud.
you would act sort of like back in the day. Now, this is before my time on the internet, definitely
Hmm.
long before your time on the internet. When you would kind of
I'm
go,
old. I'm old,
I
dude.
don't
I
believe it for a
remember.
second.
I remember before internet.
But like you go to
I
like the
do.
mainframes and you would have to wait in a queue, right, to use the machine,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that I think we're going to start going back to that, especially now with all these kind of data breaches, cybersecurity being such a high thing. You want to start a test in like a vacuumed infrastructure.
Ah, yes,
So
yes, yes. Good
that could be
idea.
another huge market where,
Oh,
you know,
yes. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
So
Like,
anyone
yeah,
listening,
especially if it's got any sort of, no, no, for sure. That's a great idea. Especially if it's got any sort of like high level IP. You're not sticking that sucker out on the cloud, and you don't have the ability to go have these big, huge servers to test out your stuff. Oh boy.
so
Yes,
I'm
that
gonna
is a
deploy it
cool,
somewhere.
cool idea.
Yeah,
Ah,
send me a
man.
1% equity stake.
I know, right? I know for sure. But it's amazing, like, how the whole flex economy, right? It's the whole flex way of doing real estate. Whether and but it really what it does is it just encourages entrepreneurism and innovation of startups and all those great things because there's barriers to entry. And if you can lower those barriers, like look all the cool things we can do, right? For sure.
Absolutely. It's definitely
Yeah, yeah.
that's definitely the one part of it. It's a huge burst to these people who can access resources or communities or people that they wouldn't have been able to normally reach, but also be able to afford to get an office, to get space, to get that kind of stuff.
Right.
But on the flip side, you're also using this network of spaces
Hmm.
now to give people a life that they never imagined before.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
able to say on Monday and Thursday when I have to pick up my kid from school and take him to soccer, I can work from this space. But on
Hmm.
Thursday, I need to speak to my clients and I need specific
Hmm.
structure or specific technology. I can go to another space. But
Yep.
then I want to work some evenings when everyone else is chilled at home and it's my night to work. I'm going to go work in a different space that's better at nighttime and closer to. So you kind of build this ecosystem of offices that fits you as a person, and more
Right.
employers are allowing their employees to make those decisions. And that
Right.
is a huge shift happening in how people are actually leveraging commercial real estate, as opposed to before someone somewhere in an office decides this is where all our people will go. Let's send everybody there.
Right.
Now that decision is being pushed down to the individual, to the family, to the household to decide
Hmm.
how are you going to structure your day based on your team, your projects, how you work, what's
Right.
important to you. And that's, I mean, it's definitely something that the pandemic definitely spurred and created this movement, or this sudden realization that we can work like that. But we're still seeing it stick around, so that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves over the next couple of years.
Oh, for sure. And I think, what about, so it really, it gets kind of funny. So it doesn't become it's taking the centric piece from company to employee. So now it's like we don't care where you work, we want you to work. But if you need but that employee still needs an office environment, right? Because it's more productive than being at home. So it's weird because now it's like, go work anywhere, it doesn't matter. So you're kind of remote, but then you're also giving that employee that sense of being in an office, which is super cool. And they could probably be more productive, but it's not about you have to come now. I will say the thing around the big debate around whether everybody comes to an office or not is how do you develop the culture of your company if not everybody's hanging out with one another, right? I mean,
I think
that's
that
kind of what people fight.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there is people are they're looking at the forest for the trees or whatever the saying is, right? You're, yes, you can let people work anywhere, but if you then use that data to see where they would choose to work,
Hmm.
you can decide where to open offices reactively as opposed to proactively. So I'm
Right.
not saying we need to open an office in one Vanderbilt because that's a cool place to work. I'm saying everyone happens to be working on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in Brooklyn. Let's open an office in Brooklyn, right? Or
Mm,
if anyone seems to be going towards the shore in the summer, let's get a fractional office or a part-time membership for all these teams to get together on the East Coast. And in the winter, we'll do it by the ski slopes, right? Depending
oh
on your
yeah.
company culture, right?
Right.
But you can use that data to build it's not really a hybrid work strategy, it's a fluid work strategy, right?
Sure.
Using the ecosystem to choose where you're going to open offices, how big they're going to be,
Hmm.
how quickly they're going to scale up, scale down. There's this huge trend now that's happening. It's kind of an undercurrent trend called fractional offices. So
Hmm.
companies are not renting a, a traditional lease and saying we're going to have this square space to us available to us from now until 10 years time from now. They're saying
Oh,
you only want this office for 5 people on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm only giving
wow.
you those. And then Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, another
Oh my God.
So
how are the office people doing a pro forma on that to figure out how they're going to get a loan? That just like changes the whole game.
yeah. And that's where you get to like the biggest hurdle that Flex needs to get over. The capital markets and how do you value a
Yeah,
Flex space? Right now, if you go to almost any bank and you say, I've got a building, I'm going to put this, and this, and this floor, but this is going to be Flex, 90% of the time, they value the Flex floor as zero. So they're like, there is no revenue here, so zero. Even though it may be more profitable than the rest of the building,
yes,
most
yeah,
times, most capital markets will say that it's a zero. Now, there's a lot of very smart and very passionate people working on these problems, both from the
okay.
financial side and from the commercial real estate side. And as soon as they have a breakthrough, I will share it from the rooftops. But
Oh,
there is, yeah, it's going to be a point where we have to point fingers at the hotel industry. The hotel industry is probably as fluid, or if not less fluid, than flex workspaces because it's by the night, right? But yet you can value a hotel building. The
yeah,
same with student accommodation. It's
right,
less flexible in the fact that people are normally there for a semester at least, or 2 semesters in a period. Yet you can still value private equities pouring into um, student accommodation market, but they're not pouring into flex because the capital markets haven't figured out what to value a flex office for. And it's because it's slightly different. It could be a fractional office, it could be a podcast studio, it could be a meeting room, it could be
right.
all of those three things within a 3 month period. So how
Mm-hmm.
do you value that square footage, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
the market, and it's going to get there. We're going to get there by having systems that speak to each other and can move data between each other. You're going to be able to extract
Mm-hmm.
enough data that can then be given to the capital markets or given to the financial teams to do actual performers based on kind of other buildings that they've operated or other operators, and you can kind of start doing benchmarking, and that's when we'll be able to get uh, a better conversation with the capital markets.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the challenges, right? I mean, it's the same thing multifamily faced when we were doing short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Like, no joke. If I had a corporate rental in one of my multifamily buildings, I gave my loan servicer heartburn. Like, they were like, wait. You have 20% of your leases are short-term leases. Oh, you can't do that. It's going to screw with our model.
Has that
I
changed?
was like, in those 3 months, I am making more money than if I rented it for a year, you crazy people.
And how has that changed now? Have they become more?
Some of them have, but what they did to get around with it, like Sonder and all these other people, what they did to get around it was they would just corporate lease it for the year and then they've arbitraged it, right? And so it solved that problem to get, fly under the radar of that. But then, yeah, that's kind of what they did because the
Interesting.
multifamily industry wasn't, they
Yeah.
were like, no, we need to hear these. It's just talking about, change. But you're right. I mean, in order for any of this to work, I think, the capital markets will be drug kicking and screaming, but they're going to get there because I don't know what else saves office, right? I mean, it has to have some sort of flex component to it. Otherwise, it's going to sit empty.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do? I mean, look at Houston, Texas. Oh my gosh, there's so much vacancy in Houston,
Yeah.
and especially downtown Houston. I'm like, oh boy. So yeah, but I think, and it really, really, really depends on, I don't know where it's going to go, but I think the whole office market needs to embrace that, and kind of see where it takes it. Let's talk a little bit about, the things that you can kind of learn from a co-working spot. And since you're in co-working, what I really like is this whole thing of the catering to the employee and the concierge version of that, and truly making an office a place you want to go to, right? Versus I got to go there
Yeah.
to work, right? And so by taking that, there's a page that everybody else can learn from because you create these spaces and these unique creative areas, and it's very distinctly designed. Like you
Yeah.
walk in, and every co-working space I've ever been in is super well designed on how it flows. It's well designed on where they put the offices, is where they put the conference rooms. Like it's really kind of interesting, that whole thing behind it. And they spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
Like it's, and so it's not, it's very thoughtful. on
Yes.
how they do that versus a regular office where there's just cubicles and we don't care and go find your desk, right? You know what I mean?
It's definitely intentional and it's definitely built around not creating spaces, but creating places, right? Places that
Right,
people want to belong or people want to go, um, and people want to kind of engage with. Now, obviously, not every space is built the same, right? You'll go into some spaces and they'll be a bit empty. You'll be in other spaces and they're too full, right? So there is a lot of people trying to get the right formula for the right niche for the right audience. But for anyone in commercial real estate, if you don't know what we're talking about right now, go and work from a co-working space.
yes.
Go and like visit your local co-working space around you, go spend a day there a week, a day there a month, and just get that vibe for how it's different, how it's more hospitable, how it's more, it's just a different culture of both from the employees and from the community, because they're community members, right? They're not occupiers. There's a
Hmm.
very big distinction between someone who's renting a space, and that is the relationship between you and them, and someone who you're providing a constant service to. Which is a premium, right? We're going to start seeing that shift. We're seeing like
Hmm.
fantastic examples from actual huge landlords and asset managers, people like Hines, Tishman Speyer, etc., who are all rolling out their own flex brands, their own amenity brands within their buildings across their portfolios, creating entire campuses.
Hmm.
Um, and we're going to keep seeing that. We're going to keep seeing folks borrow from co-working to
Hmm.
make offices more hospitable, more engaging, and more intentful. Intentful?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, intentional. Yeah, that's my
Intentional is the
word.
word I was
That's
looking for. Yes.
my word for the year is intentional.
There
So
you go.
there was an article, my buddy or our buddy, Judy Brower, Frencher, posted out this article, and I was like, oh, girlfriend, I love it. I love when you get those news stories and you're like, I gotta share this on our show on Tuesday. But it was BOMA, and it was the Orange County BOMA conference, and they were talking about what do people want if they're going to go back to the office, and the number one thing is childcare, access to childcare to get it there. So it's a very concierge thing, right? Because I mean, I remember when I way back in the day, I worked at Applied Materials, and this was like in 2000, 2001, and I had little kids. The only what made it super easy, it wasn't on their premise, but they strategically put a childcare center right on the corner, right next to it. And so you didn't have to travel all across wherever to go get your kid. And if there was something wrong, you could hop over there, and it just made everything super easy. And then so many applied materials. I mean, that place was full, like with all the applied AMAT kids, right? That is just the preference now. Like if you're gonna have me come back, I've been working from home and I've been dealing with my kids like this whole time. I still want that connection to be close to my child,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
When you want that connection, and it's also, I mean, we're seeing so many examples of childcare and workspaces now,
yeah,
from kind of people building it as an amenity, kind of sharing the costs between all the residents of a building. And we're even seeing individual companies launch their own childcare services. I think it's Red Rooster and been in the media over the last couple of weeks, where for the last 10 years, they've been running a childcare business aside their business only for their employees' kids. And I'm like, you're running a nursery school, you're running like a primary school, just so that your employees don't have to stress about the cost of childcare. You have to stress
right,
about where they are, the safety. And that's, yeah, these are the things that are going to bring people back. It's different from, oh, kombucha on tap. And yeah, some people might love that, but it's not going
yeah,
to push the needle for, especially the millennial generation who are getting to kind of, they're having children now, they're having probably
yeah,
children now. So they're going to look for different reasons to go to physical spaces. And then as I said a bit earlier, as their kids do different activities and they kind of do different things, they're going to want to be near sometimes and farther away sometimes,
yeah.
as make it more dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So, all right, so that drives me. This is squirrel moment. Do you remember? We're old enough to remember. You remember the movie 9 to 5 with
No.
Dolly Parton and Lily Tomlin? You remember this movie 9 to 5, right? So it was they hated their boss. That's the whole story. They tried to poison him, and anyway, but But if you watch that movie, it's such a lesson in office dynamics. I mean, that just show that about office dynamics. Because what happened was they tried to kill their boss, and they tied him up and kept him, like they put him in like some sort of spa or something. Or no, the girl went to learn French or whatever, but they got rid of him, and he was no longer managing the office, which was very authoritarian and very much dude-like, right? I mean, it was this guy, and they're like, just work, right? And so a woman takes over, and it's Lily, and she starts painting the office yellow. And then they had childcare. And then she turned it from this horrible office environment to a place that people wanted to come to. And magically, what happened is everybody became more productive. And then when the guy figured out that he'd been trying to get poisoned, he comes back, he's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then he didn't do anything about it because everybody thought it was him. So there's a
I'm definitely gonna
synopsis of
watch
9 to 5, and everybody just remembers a song by Dolly Parton. But it is such truly a case study on office dynamics and how you can,
that.
if you make your employees happy and they have access, they did. She just, it's really kind of cool. It's
That's
really
fascinating. I'm going to watch that again.
that's probably not what you thought about when we are going to start this interview, but
No, definitely
I
not. No.
I have my squirrel moments. I do.
Love it.
It's very cool. So you do this week in co-working. You have your technology, but we haven't really talked about your technology yet. So let's do that now. So one of the big, huge problems in prop tech, as you are trying to address, is the whole integration issue,
Yeah.
which sucks. I'm not going to say the A word. It sucks, but so 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 talk about what you're doing, what your technology's doing.
Sure. So, I've been kind of a back-end engineer pretty much my entire career. So I've had to integrate systems pretty much the entire time. Whenever you have to build an integration, you have to think about two sides of it, right? What's happening in your system and what's happening in the other system, and then you have to monitor that any change to the API is reflected in code. So what we've actually done at Syncaroo is we've built a one-to-many integration, or what we call a unified API. So you talk one language to Syncaroo, you only integrate with Syncaroo, and then the other pieces you just turn on, right? So think of it much like Zapier, but
Mhm.
all built around the nuance of how buildings process data. And to explain a little bit more about that, if you think about, as much as I love Zapier, but let's think about as a zap from one system to another. It's only moving text, right? So let's say someone
Yeah.
books a meeting in a space for their CEO to meet their investor.
Hmm.
Zapier only sees a piece of text. And if that
Right.
text gets jumbled along the way, or it doesn't land in the right place, or lands in a way that doesn't help, three different businesses are being affected by that one piece of text. The company
Wow.
hosting the meeting room, the CEO, and the investor, and that
Yeah.
person who made the bookings job, right? So four very critical things are happening about one piece of text. So what we've actually done is we've trained up a system that knows how important that input is and then monitors the outputs to make sure that we don't let down those four businesses or those four.
Oh, wow. That's
And
cool.
that's the big part that we started building in 2019. We get to a point now where we're connecting mailroom services, we're connecting Wi-Fi services, provisioning, so that everything kind of speaks to each other. I think one of our customers put it best, where we asked them what the brain of their company was, and they're like, this inventory system X. And he's like, but you guys are like our central nervous system. So the
Mhm.
brain knows where everything is, and Syncaroo tells the rest of the system what to do with that information. So
Mm.
something happens in the arms, the messages have to be sent so that the rest of the body or the building can react and provide a good experience. And that's pretty much what we do. Our job is primarily focused at supporting commercial real estate and flex space businesses. And
Mhm.
we go in and we look at their stack and we figure out where data is being squirreled away or siloed, and where processes are taking more and more what we call tab time. So every time you jump between two different interfaces, so if you think about your prop tech company or your interface and an Excel sheet, if someone
Yeah.
had to jump between those two things, every time they do that,
Gross.
their brain takes a second to be like, what am I looking at again? What am I supposed to do here? How does this thing work, this Excel sheet
Hmm.
or this prop tech company work? And then they start doing what they're supposed to do. Now, if they have to do that jump 5 times to do one task, They're burning
Mhm.
so much productivity. Their brain is becoming tired, just getting
Yeah.
tired just from doing that. They haven't actually done the work yet. They're just
Yeah.
jumping between the tabs. And when we interviewed a whole bunch of people across commercial real estate and flex, they mostly jumped across 10 different apps at one time. So if you're thinking about that cognitive load that they're having to do to remember, if you look at your app, your browser now, I'm pretty sure you have at least 20 tabs open. Um, Otherwise, you're
Guilty,
much better than me.
guilty, guilty.
And so that's not only taking up machine memory, but it's taking up your memory, right? When you
Oh
have to
yeah,
do
yeah,
the next thing, you have to remember which browser it was in, which tab it was in, where on that.
yeah.
And some studies actually went out and found how much time is lost to that switching of apps. And it's
Mm,
5 weeks of productivity every year per employee.
that's
So if you
crazy.
think about like a co-working space or a commercial real estate company with 100 employees, that's 100 times 5 weeks of paid time that's gone
Yeah.
just because the systems that you use don't speak to each other. If you
Hmm.
don't have to jump between two tabs because everything automatically updates everything else,
Hmm.
you get that productivity back. So I
Yeah.
always like to ask people in commercial real estate, what would you do with 5 more weeks? If you could get 5 more weeks of
Yeah, I know,
distraction
right?
free time,
Right.
what would you do?
Oh, a ton. I mean, it's even worse is some of the tabs I open are different instances of the same thing so I can get a task done. I mean,
Yes.
like, if I'm doing an event in LinkedIn, I have to have three tabs open so I can know who like I have to go through this list because it's to set up a LinkedIn event and you want to get the right people in it. You can't just do that from their event page. You have to go over here, go, okay, who do I need to invite? Okay, all right, and then come over here and type it. Like it's annoying as hell.
Yes. And I mean, LinkedIn's a fairly well-built interface.
Yeah.
Look at some of the legacy systems in commercial real estate,
Oh,
where
oh, yeah, yeah. Oh boy.
you're going to
Don't
need
even.
15 tabs just
I
to,
know to
if you
do
even
one
have one.
task.
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of where our technology sits. It's just trying to figure out how do you get people away from copy and pasting from one screen to another, or
Hmm.
jumping between tabs, so they can
Right.
step away from their computer and do the rewarding things they joined your business to do. We have
Right.
so many community managers across the 10,000 plus 15,000 co-working spaces that exist who joined a space to be involved with people, to do events, to connect
Right.
businesses, and they're stuck staring at a screen because the prop tech companies won't talk to each other.
Yeah. That's so silly. It's so, so silly. Okay.
Mhm.
So what about, okay, so on the same topic, um, so what about, so is it not, you're not just doing this for co-working, right? Are you doing this for other people too, right? Yeah.
We're pretty much anyone in commercial real estate now. We have
Yeah.
got some multifamily folks who've reached out to see if we can connect systems. There are folks in industrial. There are folks who are doing, because most times people who own office buildings own other assets. And
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what we can do in office, they try and pull us really, really quickly. Now, there are obviously other companies in residential, in other parts of commercial real estate that are also trying to make prop tech talk to each other a lot faster. And they're doing great work. I
Hmm.
just believe that if everything speaks to each other, regardless of who does it, we lift that boat, right?
Oh, for sure.
So we do it
Yeah.
across our main market is commercial real estate, office, and kind of flex. We started with flex. We're doing flex since 2019. But flex systems need to speak to landlord systems. And so
Hmm.
we do a lot of work with commercial landlords who need their systems, especially now as more and more deals are made that aren't rent-based or aren't lease-based. They're
Hmm.
management agreements, they're revenue shares. So
Right.
your accounting system as a landlord to speak to the systems that a co-working space is doing is using, but you don't want to actually log into their systems. So how do
No.
you create a reporting structure
Right.
or a data syncing structure that's secure, that
Hmm.
allows people to get what they want to get done without anyone having to spend weeks of the year producing reports and creating Excel sheets and doing all that stuff that
Yeah.
hundreds of amazing people all around the world are doing that every single month.
So it's a little bit different than integration. I mean, it's integration, but it's a little higher level because you're actually now you're looking at it like this is a process. This process requires this person to go to five different, six different places, but let's pull it all together so they don't have to go to five or six different places, right? I mean,
Correct.
that's so they don't know. It's like they don't know how the sausage is being made.
No.
but they're just getting their stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta,
It's all built on an integration infrastructure, right? Our core IP is an integration infrastructure that we can deploy into pretty much any build.
okay.
How they deploy that, oftentimes the landlord or our customer chooses to have us implement it in a way that they don't have to train their team on how it works. So if
Hmm.
you have an amazing sales team, they don't need to know how your inventory system works. Right now, they do, right? A sales team at a commercial real estate office or at a co-working space needs to be able to log into the inventory system to see what's available, to see what the pricing is, to see when this contracts are going up. Then they have to log into the CRM to update that. Then they need to go and actually send their email. Whereas if we connect that all up, you only need to train them on their CRM,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You can hire better people, train them less, and have better
Hmm.
results.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the integration stack is our definitely our technology, but the rest of what we do is what makes us different.
Yeah. And then, so are you deploying AI to kind of help too? Like, are you,
Uh,
I mean, at some point, the system, I mean, some of the rudimentary stuff that people now you're, I mean, you're simplifying the rudimentary tasks, but at some point AI can take those away, right? They don't need to do, right?
so a lot of our clients learned that they want to implement both AI and BI, so business intelligence and artificial
Right,
intelligence, right?
right, right.
They want to be able to use those tools across their disconnected tech stack. So the
Mm-hmm.
first thing we have to help them to do is to get data into a specific place in a specific format that they own, that they can then put any tool they want on top of it. So we recommend AI that they can then connect.
Are you kidding me? There's like that's like a 5 mountains you're climbing to get their data all together. Oh
Well,
my gosh.
this is it. It's something that has to happen because
I
everyone,
know, I know,
oh, commercial real estate will like never uses AI because the AI can't speak to 100 systems. And even if it
I
did,
know.
do you want to give it unlimited access to
New,
all of your systems? Probably
new.
not. Because if you don't know how to use it, hackers do, right?
Mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm.
you have to put in an AI, not even an AI strategy, but a data strategy and an integration strategy that lets you do AI well.
Right,
And
right, right.
that's why if you look at our website, I don't think we've ever mentioned AI on our website, but our customers, that's what's on their mind. But before
Mm-hmm.
we can get them excited about all the things they can do with AI, they have to think about the fundamentals. How
Oh
do you
yeah.
get all that data from different systems into somewhere that you're like, okay, this
Mm-hmm.
can now be used to do analytics, dashboarding,
Right,
reporting, and
right,
AI.
right.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those.
It's like people want to get up and they've never been a baseball player before, but they want to hit a home run,
Yeah,
right? So they want to jump into AI because it's a shiny object and they have to get there. And they know if I don't have an AI strategy, I'm probably going to get fired. So
yes.
they run to the AI thing, and then you're like going, dude, you haven't even made it. You can't even hit a single. You can't
And
like if
that's
you looked at your processes, you're still doing paper and pencil.
yeah, exactly. And you'd be like, dude, that's not even a baseball bat. Like,
I know
what are you holding?
exactly. It's
But
a golf club.
exactly, swing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
no,
pretty
I
much
know.
it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you, right? I mean, it's the whole industry is facing that, right? They don't even know what they don't know. I mean, they don't. I mean, but they're being forced, and there's FOMO around AI, and I'm like, you aren't even collecting all the data that you can collect, right? I mean, that's what we do, right? We're a data aggregator. I'm like, you're not even collecting the data you should be collecting yet. Like, let's get there. And then let's talk about, okay, let's look at all your processes, like what you're doing, and let's try to automate those, right? And or get really good around this. So you get the data you need first, like then let's look at how you operate and optimize that, and then we can talk about doing AI, right? But and even those, I think, look, even those very large or real estate organizations are still super inefficient. I mean, they were built from the people, God bless them. They've been around a long time, but they didn't have technology, so they didn't know how to implement it, right? A lot of those old, now a lot of the real estate companies are getting, really knowledgeable CIOs and IT folk, right? But a lot of them didn't have it for like a long, long time, right? And that
And they didn't
hence
need
the
that was
reason.
the main thing because they didn't need any technology because the deals were infrequent, big, and made on relationships. But
Yeah.
when everything kind of dispersed now and democratized,
Yep.
technology becomes critical. And so does the
Yeah.
data and the systems like that folks like yourselves are building.
Yeah.
As long as it can connect to everything that else they're doing, it becomes an easier part of their business. I think
Yeah.
that's one thing for the folks who are listening, who are prop tech founders, is we're all trying to sell solutions to people who don't know how to implement them,
That's
right?
true.
So
Yeah.
you're selling to an exec level, you're selling to a front of house or a sales team, and even if they love what you're doing, how do they connect it to the rest of their stack? How do they connect it
Right.
to the rest of the things that they have to use or the teams have to
Exactly.
use? And unless you can address that through hiring a huge development team and building hundreds of integrations, or working with someone like ourselves or yourselves, you're not going to have that answer. And you're always going to be
Mm-mm.
pushing a boulder up a mountain, hoping
Yep.
that it doesn't crush you on the way down.
They don't even know what their tech stack is. You know, they don't. I mean, it's an amazing thing to me. And it's why the poor property, the field staff have 16 logins to
Yes.
do their jobs. You
Yes.
know, and you talk about just going through tabs. It's like not only that, they have to remember what their login passwords are. And then, heaven forbid someone makes it change it every 90 days. Like, oh, shoot me in the face. But yeah, I mean, it's so difficult. But I get it's the evolution of technology, right? Like you have people solving very specific pain points of things, and they solve that one little thing. Great. Thank you. But they didn't make their stuff integratable because back then they were just focused on solving this one specific pain point. Well, now it's okay, we need all of these other things too. So now we got to make sure that we are, like can be talking to other people, right? And that was the last thing on anybody's mind way back in the day. All the legacy systems aren't, I think they're becoming more integratable now. I think everybody understands the need there, and the new prop tech companies are being built that way, right? But I think the older ones were not. And I think some of the older prop tech, and I'm talking older as 2020,
Yeah.
are dying because they weren't built to be integratable, right? Which is also the very much the lesson that I learned because we're having to redo our tech stack because I was a knucklehead and did not bring my CTO in from the beginning. And he's like, Amy. And he's like, you built this on the wrong tech. And I'm like, well, it works. He's like, yeah, but you can't integrate with it. And I'm like, so this is a conversation I just had, no joke, this week with him, and he's like, we have to rebuild it, and it's painful. It is painful, but I'm like, you know what? I got to do it. I can't get around it. I can't, I can cry my beer all day long, but that's not going to move us forward. So suck it up, girlfriend, and let's go. But it's such a big thing. And so it's helpful that, I mean, obviously what you're solving a huge need because a lot of those legacy systems aren't going to do what I'm doing. They're not
No,
going to rebuild their stuff.
no.
No. Yardy's going to rebuild anything? Hell no. I'm sure that thing was written on COBOL. I mean, like, I'm old enough to know what COBOL is, y'all. I'm just saying, I actually had to work in COBOL way, way, way back in the day with this publisher I went and did a gig for. And I was like, even I was then, and this is like early 90s. And I was like, this sucks. And I was like, so I know what COBOL is. I've actually worked in it. But yeah, it was like, I don't know, before C. And C is so old now. Like before object oriented programming, OOP was big. I mean, we're gonna go through the. I'm like, you're like taking me back to like memory lane.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
my
oh
childhood.
yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, I know. So always great things. Well, this has been such a cool conversation, man. This is awesome sauce.
Thank you
And
for having
look, there we are. Like, our hours has gone by. Look at that. It just
me
like
like that.
it happens. It's how it
Always,
goes.
always happy to geek out with you, Amy.
I
Thank
know, it's so awesome. So if anybody would like to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
you. The best way to get hold of me is to go to hectorkolonas.com. That is
Mhm.
my personal website. It directs you to all the businesses I am involved with. right now it's the newsletter and this week and called This Week in Coworking, and Syncaroo.com is for all the prop tech stuff if you want to integrate and connect your systems. But HectorKolonas.com is how you can probably find me and then find out more information on everything I do.
That's awesome. So cool. I have PS. I have a cool story about Hector. So when we first met, I got startup advice from you, by the way, when I was first starting, and you probably don't remember. I was first starting in 2021, and it was such good advice, by the way. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of what I'm doing, and I really want to automate this, that, and the other. And like, Amy, just go get a customer. They're not going to know how the sausage is made. Just hire a bunch of VAs and just get it done. And magically it goes to them, and but they don't know that that's not your system doing it. And that way you can get some customers and then, build it as you go and iterate as you go. And I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, that is such a good idea. So Hector has words of wisdom every once in a while. So y'all should go to hectorkolonas.com and he'll help you for
Just want
sure.
to absolutely confirm there are no army of VAs at Syncaroo. It is.
But for Amy, who didn't have a lot of money and she was trying to get customers and trying to figure it out, on the fly, like
It's
startup
a,
people do,
it's
it
a
was a
fantastic
good,
way to do it. My first booking platform was exactly like that. It
oh
was
yeah,
sending emails when an email form came in. So
yeah.
glad that that advice worked out, and I'm excited to see the next steps of your company.
Oh
See what
yeah.
happens with the PropTech Council, and see where I can help.
Yeah, it's great. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.